You two people, it is time for charts and graphs. We're going to talk a little football today. Promised this video a week ago. Never got to it. We are doing it today. So, we're market movers. Link in the description down below if you want to play around with your own versions of charts and graphs. Let's just go ahead and dive in. I got a few different things for us to look at. We are going back 180 days on all this stuff. And that lines up with the end of February. So, a little bit past the Super Bowl, still going to get a little market noise in there. We're going to look at silvers like we always like to do. We're going to look at some Optic hollows. And then I have a wild card category that I'm throwing in here. That's not that big of a wild card. We're going to look at downtowns as well. Now, none of this stuff is perfect. We're just trying to get a general idea of what's been moving and shaking in football. And I did notice a couple little things poking around the numbers. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's look at silvers first. I have this in price movements. Football, PSA 10, Prism, silver. I do have it filtered for at least a minimum number of sales of 4. Otherwise, you get these one-off sales in there of cards that just hardly ever sell. So I wanted to filter those out. And I have this sorted by biggest price gains, not percentage, dollar values. And we'll dig into that more in a second. So the number one is Trevor Lawrence. He's up 89%. $400, a little over $400 to a little over $800. Not surprised. The Jags have had a ton of hype on him all off season long. Travis Hunter edition, Brian Thomas getting some second year buzz. The Jags are very trendy heading into the season. There is one thing to note on this Lawrence card, however, that could also be playing, that'll juice this a little bit more. This is one of those ones that skews heavily to PSA 9. This card is a very tough grade, and it artificially decreases the pop count. There are only 135 PSA 10s. So this card gets a little bit more swingy than most. So keep that in mind. Next up, Joe Burrow, $325 increase. That's a 20% movement on him. Not super surprised there. If anything, I kind of thought it would be more. And that is, I'll touch on this now. The high-priced quarterbacks did not move as much as they have in the past, in my opinion. The young, trendy guys, quarterbacks, did not move as much in the past, in my opinion. The position players, percentage-wise, actually performed pretty decent. So, third on this, we have A.J. Brown with a pretty big bump up. Now, I will asterisk this one. It could just be because he had a couple low sales post Super Bowl. But regardless, he's up a pretty decent chunk. Then we have Justin Fields. Not super surprised there. He went to the Jets. He's going to get a bulk of the workload, so he saw a pretty big offseason bump. Christian McCaffrey coming back from his injuries. Nice little bump up. Kyler Murray, people just on a wing and a prayer there, I guess. But only $60. You can see how quickly we go from a few $100 change to $60. Now, $60 on Kyler Murray is still a 50% bump up. Spencer Rattler getting some love. Daniel Jones just got the starting job, I'm sure. And you can see very recent sales there. Some of that is just very recent. Derrick Henry getting a little love. And now we get into the big boys. And you can see Justin Herbert flat. A $50 change on an $800 card is nothing. Same with, and here's the big one, Patrick Mahomes 2017 Prism. Basically no movement. It was $4,750 in February. It's $4,800 now. Nothing. Drake London, big bump up. Once again, position players, the young trendy position players, a lot of them are going up. It's not huge dollar values, but when you're doubling from 50 to 100, that's a pretty big change, and it could add up if you bought a lot of them. Brian Thomas, same thing, 50 or 100 to $150 on him. Jalen Hurts, slightly up, which is crazy considering the season that he had last year. Justin Jefferson, slightly up. Other thing you're noticing, the more expensive guys are not getting as much movement as the cheaper guys. George Pickens leaves the Steelers, goes to the Cowboys, 115% jump. But he was only $30 to begin with. Now he's $70. Said this for years. It's way easier for a card to go from 50 to 100 than it is for it to go from 500 to 1,000. Takes way more work for that to happen. Now, to make the same amount of money, you have to have conviction and buy in a lot of quantity, but you actually see better gains on this sub $100 stuff. It also goes to show how much movement there could be on that sub $100, even $200 stuff that kind of gets washed away because everyone just wants to look at the biggest numbers. Like, oh, look, Trevor Lawrence went up $355, but percentage wise, there's actually players that performed a lot better. CJ Stroud basically stayed flat. He's sitting at $400. This was a $1,000 card at the National a little over a year ago. Bryce Young, 20% bump. He's been pretty trendy. Garrett Wilson, a little bit of a bump up, and then Ricky Pearsall with a 50% bump up. He's been getting a lot of heat in fantasy season. I can keep going on this, but you get the gist. I want to flip this around now because it does show an interesting pattern as well. There's a lot of red on here, but almost all of it is 2024 guys. And whenever you're looking at this stuff or someone's presenting this stuff for you, these are things that you need to keep in mind. The reason why these are all red is because 180 days ago is when all this stuff was hitting the market. All this stuff, Prism came out at the very beginning of the year. It was all coming back from PSA in February and March. As we all know, the first ones on the market are going to sell for a ton, and then the market normalizes and finds itself. So we're seeing that play out here in all the guys going down the most. It's no surprise. It's all the heavy hitters from 2024. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Joe Milton, Drake May, Bo Nix, Brock Bowers, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Cooper DeJean. It's a laundry list. There was one. Who was the one? Oh, not surprising. Anthony Richardson from the non-2024 guys is the one that I wanted to call out. He's down about 37%. I wouldn't be surprised if he went a little bit lower, given the fact that he did not get the starting job. We'll have to see how that plays out. I am sure he'll go a little bit lower. Someone will buy in. He'll have a couple flashy plays, and someone will profit. That's the way these things typically work. Now, let's flip over and look at Optic Hollows. And for new viewers of the channel, the reason we use Optic Hollows is because 2018 silvers were impossible to pull. They're one of the rarer cards out there. Their pop counts are minuscule, and they just do not transact often enough. So for the 2018 class, we use Optic Hollows. Now here, we are seeing a bit more movement. Josh Allen up 30%. And these are pretty low pop counts on these. Keep that in mind. That Josh Allen has only popped 278. Baker Mayfield up 44% from 125 to 180. I'm actually surprised he's not more expensive. Lamar Jackson flat, Sam Darnold flat. And then the only other notable 2018 rookie is Saquon Barkley. And he is down slightly. Nick Chubb also down slightly in the last legs of his career. So Josh Allen performing extremely well. Baker performing extremely well. I don't think there's any surprise there. And no real hard hits on anyone from the names in the 2018 class. Josh Rosen, anyone looking for his stuff? $6 for a PSA 10 Optic Hollow. Now, downtowns. What I did here was just PSA 10 downtowns, rookies only. Because if I didn't put rookies in here, I would get a ton of noise. Now, like I mentioned earlier, when you talk about this stuff, you have to put some of these things in context. I don't know that downtowns are the best use case here. I wanted to use something other than silvers just to get an idea, but downtowns have a ton of heat on them from the repack brigade. They want these things left, right, and center, so that alone would keep the market inflated on these cards. But I still think there's something we can learn here. And once again, I did filter this to number of sales of 2. Downtowns are actually, outside of the repack brigade, I think they are a pretty good gauge if you're looking over a longer period of time of how a player's price is moving. Because they're rare, but they're not impossibly rare. Like a Joe Burrow is pop 42. If you're looking over a 6-month period, there's 5 transactions for that card. That's, you're getting basically like 1 a month. So it gives you a general idea. So let's go ahead and dig into these. I also have these sorted by percentage change or by dollar value change. Burrow up the most, 35%, up $1,200. So from $3,700 to $5K. Lamar up 38%. That's $1,000 jump. Josh Allen, not as much, only up 700. I'm a little surprised by that, given how much Lamar and Burrow jumped. But part of that could be the pop counts on these. This one only has pop 42. The Josh Allen is a 183. That's one thing to keep in mind with these. That especially on the more modern players like Burrow, they have multiple downtowns. This one is the super short print one. And then his regular one down here has a much higher pop count. It's only up about 10%. The better comparison here, while I'm talking about this in real time, would probably be this Josh Allen to this Joe Burrow. But regardless, they're both still in the green. Jamar Chase up a pretty decent amount. Brock Purdy up. Once again, it's downtown, so they're all in the green. If I flip this around and show you the red, it's going to be a rinse and repeat of what we looked at for silvers. All the 2024 guys are price correcting into where they should be. So the top of this list is almost all 2024 players until we get to Devontae Smith and then Kyler Murray. And then it's a bunch of 2024 players again until we get to Will Levis. Spoilers, Will Levis is down because he sucks. Pretty easy one to figure out there. I'm just kind of curious on the rankings of most expensive to least expensive. So we have Burrow's SSSSP. I'm throwing a couple extra S's in there because it is the shorter print of the two. That one goes for about 1,000 more than his Optic version, which is a little interesting considering the pop's about half as much. Josh Allen comes in the 2-hole, then Lamar, then Brock Purdy. Jaden settling in under Brock Purdy. I'm a little surprised Jaden's not more expensive than Brock Purdy, but we have Justin Herbert. I still think his stuff's a little overinflated. Jalen Hurts, another Justin Herbert because of the opposite. Once again, these two, it's wild how these sell for fairly similar prices. Now the dates don't line up perfectly on these, so asterisk that. But his regular Don Russ, which is the harder one to gem, is a pop 49. The Optic is a 176, and they're only a few $100s apart in price. Now, like I said, part of that could be one of these hasn't sold in a month. Maybe if this sold today, it would go for a lot more, but I don't know that it would. CJ Stroud coming in at around $2,000. There's the other Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Jamar Chase, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, and CeeDee Lamb. One of the interesting thing to note here is that on the silvers, Trevor Lawrence got a lot of hype. On the downtowns, not as much. And once again, that could be pop count driven. His pop count on his Optic downtown is actually way less than his Silver Prism. Silver Prism pop is only like 100 and some. This is almost 400. So take that for what it's worth. So let's pull back for a second. It does seem like the quarterback market heading into the season, and this is based off of what I'm looking at on here and what I'm seeing in the streets. The National was completely different this year from a football perspective in my mind. Usually you come out of that show with like 3 hot names. Oh my God, everybody wanted XYZ of the insert young quarterback name here. I didn't think that was the case this year. Lawrence was a little buzzy. Bryce Young was a little buzzy, but they have been for months. And it wasn't enough to rise above the noise of everything else. Now, is that people getting smarter and realizing, hey, I probably shouldn't be buying up all these quarterbacks right before the season starts because the numbers show, and I'm sure I'll do another one at the end of the year. It's a tradition unlike any other, where you go and look at all the football cards for the year and they're all in the red from the time the season starts until you get to Christmas, generally how it works. Are people finally smartening up to that and realizing, I'm not really going to do this? Are they shifting the money to positional players? They've gone up some, but that feels like the position player demand and price movements that we're seeing, to me, feels more natural of, oh, like I really like this player. His silver prism's only 50, $60. Sure, I'll get one. I just drafted him on my fantasy team. He's the face of the franchise. I would like to have one of his cards, or he plays for my favorite team. It's a low dollar entry point, especially if you're newer to the hobby or you're newer in the cards or whatever, and you look at like what a Amon-Ra St. Brown sells for compared to a Joe Burrow, and you're like, wait, what the hell's going on here? Even a Jamar Chase is a fraction of the cost of Burrow, so you could get a really nice Chase card for way cheaper if you're a Bengals fan or you're invested in the Cincinnati passing game from a fantasy standpoint. Because I do think, I don't know how much it impacts it, but I guarantee you fantasy impacts card prices at least a little bit, with people wanting to buy a card of a player that led them to a championship or whoever's going to be their most important player that year. I am sure that that happens. So there seems to be a little bit of the lower end player, position player buzz, the cheaper price points, seeing the most percentage gains. Quarterbacks outside of Lawrence and a handful of others have seen some gains, but I just does not feel like it's been as crazy as years past. And I wonder if another part of that is the repack brigade, because they love football. That is the number one thing that they look for is football at these shows. If it's them, like a rising tide lifts all boat situation, so everything is kind of leveling up together versus certain players getting out and running on their own, because the demand is all coming from the repackers. That demand is overshadowing speculator / collector demand. Because in the past, the speculation would drive the market. The, oh God, this guy is, he's coming into the season. They did this. They got a new offensive line. They got this, they got that, they got this other thing. And that would drive the prices up. Now it just feels like the prices are getting drove up because it's a football card, it's a PSA 10, and it's shiny. And they need it for their repack. So it could be overshadowing the natural demand or the hype-driven demand that we've had in the past, because those guys just have way more money to throw around than your average person in a Bengals jersey looking for a Joe Burrow card. Don't know. That's just my thoughts on it from what I've seen in the numbers and what I've seen going to shows the last couple of months. As always, I'm curious for your thoughts and comments down below. If you're a dealer, a flipper, a repack buyer, what are your thoughts? What are you seeing out there in the streets? Catch boys and girls on the next one. Peace.